think it's based on experimentation. If you look at what happened in Antwerp, it appeared to work. But then I suspect that the population of Antwerp behave differently when they leave bars and restaurants.
Have you been to Antwerp? I'm not being funny. You keep quoting Antwerp at me. Have you ever been there?
Yes, I have.
It's like a genteel part of the world.
A lovely port.
Where people know how to behave themselves. This is Great Britain we're talking
They have mayonnaise on their
chips.
A
nation
there,
of boozers.
You had your what?
They have mayonnaise on their chips there, not ketchup.
They do.
Just
well,
goes
there
to
you
show.
go.
Yeah.
Different culture.
Look, the point being, though, we are not Antwerp. We are a country of boozers. And all that's happening is at 10 o'clock, because everybody has to be out by 10 o'clock,
on our
we are sending out tens, hundreds of thousands of people into the street, and then they're going to off-licences, they're going to supermarkets, and they're just boozing in the street or going home.
But that's going to happen at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock.
So why change it then? What's the difference?
No difference. I think we just have a culture where people are not taking the virus seriously. They are rebelling. They are defying the guidelines, and that is our culture. This is what happens in a democracy. It doesn't happen in totalitarian states. It happens in the States. It happens here. It's happening in Madrid. People are protesting against guidelines. They just don't want to acknowledge that this virus is a serious threat to...
Let me ask you another question. University. So I've got a son going back to one this week. Susanna has. It affects a lot of people, this. Is there not a way, rather like sports done, where you create university bubbles? I just thought about this at the weekend, where basically, say you've got, 20,000 people at university. You say, right, you've all got to stay on campus, right? So you'd have to try and work out the ones who are not on campus and try and work out what you do about that. You test everybody. They have to stay within the confines of the campus, which are pretty big, and then they can all socialise with each other as much as they like, once they're all tested negative, in the surroundings of the campus. Is it a mad idea? Because these kids, this is supposed to be the best years of their life. And they're all being imprisoned in their horrible little digs. And you're thinking, well, why can't there be a way, surely, where they could just create a bubble in the university campuses? Am I talking nonsense?
No, I think there's some logic in that, in that we know that whilst they're transmitting the virus readily, some 43%, I believe, of cases are now in the 15 to 19-year-old age group. So they are a hotbed of infection, if you like, but they are rarely affected badly. They sometimes are by COVID-19. And there is an argument for saying put them in a big bubble, but don't let that bubble come out into the rest of the population.
Right. Yeah.
Because
but I think students would be up for that. I think you said to them, look, the sacrifice is
you
can't
don't
leave...
see your family anymore. You only see your new friends.
Well, look, if you're 19, 20 years old, you get told you can't see
I think
Auntie Doris for a bit, you're probably
appeal.
fine about it.
There are mental health issues involved as well, and a lot of, I think, first-year students, foundation-year students, freshers, first-year students, find it very difficult to make the adjustment from moving away from home and living on campus in university accommodation.
I think the challenge, though, Dr Hilary, is if they're confined to their room or their flat, isn't it? If they were allowed perhaps a little bit, they can actually get out of their block. As we've seen there, they're describing it as prison, either the Scottish or the Manchester universities. Just on the Antwerp point, Dr Hilary, because I was interested when you were mentioning about the fact
He's
it worked.
with Antwerp.
A curfew was imposed on the entire territory of the province of Antwerp. Authorities decided all residents in the province must be home from 11:30 at night until 6 in the morning. Now, that's quite different, isn't it, from a curfew that says you can't be in a pub, but you can be with all your mates from the pub, hundreds of them, out on the street. It's a different sort of curfew. So I can sort of see how it might have worked if everyone's literally sent home to their own homes with no mixing.
But it also implies that they're using public transport at the same times. So there's a kind of parallel. I just feel that, people and university students are intelligent by definition. They've got their degree. They're at university. They're going to get their degree. They've earned the opportunity to work for it. And they have to understand that humans transmit the virus between each other. It doesn't happen any other way.
They know that, but here's the problem. They know that, but they also know it doesn't really seriously affect people who are of their age and don't have an underlying health condition. They can see the data like we can.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the answer is somehow to create some kind of situation at universities where they all go back, but they have to stay in the confines of university, not just their room, which I think will be incredibly difficult for these kids.
OK,
to do that.
so on a campus university, as you've already identified, Piers, that would be quite straightforward.
Yeah.
The trouble is, if you're in a city university or
Yeah.
a university where your block is here and somebody else's block,
Yeah.
you know, is the other side of the city, then what counts as the confines of that
Well, you would
bubble?
have to try and create a situation there, I guess, where you provide transport. And, you know, you've got to remember, these universities, they're still charging full price.
More than £9,000.
You know, we're parents shelling out our big cheques for kids. You know, my boy is going back to your old University of Bristol. He's doing 3 lectures online a week, he's discovered. You know, I mean, that's what you get for your £9,000. Is that really?
And the government has said you should take it up with the university.
Well, I have sympathy with the universities. Obviously, they've got huge issues. Of course they have. But I think that you've got to try... And it's, you know, obviously different universities, different campuses, so on. Some do, some don't. It can't apply to all of them, perhaps, but it could apply to some of them. And I just don't think it's a mad idea.
It's interesting what you say about younger people. And, of course, Dr Hilary, the statistics do show that younger people are far less likely to have a serious form of COVID. I mean, to be honest, it probably is going to be like a form of flu, isn't it, if you're a younger person getting it? But we had, over the last couple of days, this warning from a 29-year-old, Chris Grayley, who fell seriously ill with COVID-19 after thinking he was invincible and admitting he was the first to say coronavirus was all bull. Beep.
Have we got it? Can we play
He is
it?
now confined to a hospital bed. Let's listen to Chris Grayley.
My name's Chris. I'm 29. Currently being treated in Watford General Hospital for COVID-19 and acute pneumonia. I caught it in Tenerife, thinking I was invincible, not wearing a mask, and I paid the price. I've got no underlying health issues. I don't want anyone making the same mistakes as me. I was sat in intensive care, waiting to get more treatment. I'm not knowing if I'm coming out the other side, so I really want you to take this message on board. This could happen to anyone. Please, please take care. Wear your mask, follow the guidelines, and do what needs to be done.
Well, that's a pretty sobering video for any young person who thinks this isn't happening to me. So it's not as clear-cut, is it, Hilary? Also, if you look at what's happening in France, again, we are a few weeks behind France. Really serious concerns now. Hospitals
Very
filling
much
up.
so. Yeah.
A lot of death numbers increasing. Fears of a new national lockdown. You know, this is not something in isolation in this country. And clearly, what they're worried about here is this could be getting out of control right now, but it's not yet showing in the numbers, right?
Yeah. So we saw Chris there, age 29, picked up that virus in Tenerife. He's struggling to breathe. He's got an oxygen mask on. He's young. It does happen to young people. It happens to people with no pre-existing conditions, athletes, marathon runners, swimmers, you know, you name it. It happens to young people. It happens to children. It happens to babies. This can affect anybody of any age.
When you say that to parents, though, Dr Hilary, we should point out it's exceptionally rare that children and babies
but it can happen.
But with rising numbers of cases, it becomes more common and less rare. And that's the problem. Unless you get the prevalence down, you see increasing numbers of cases in all age groups, but particularly the vulnerable. You're absolutely
Dr
right.
Hilary,
And
what
France,
were we
which would be-
expecting?
France
What were we
has got
expecting
10%
when we
of intensive
opened
care
up?
beds already taken up by COVID-19 patients.
Why was it going to be any different? We've got a couple of treatments, which is fantastic, but as soon as we opened up, without testing in place, why did the government think it was going to be any different? Of course we were going to see an uptick in cases, weren't we?
We
Just
were.
as France has seen.
Yes, it was inevitable. The economy was the pressure for the government to open up and come out of lockdown, but they wanted to do it on a gradual, controlled basis, and people didn't really follow that. And perhaps it wasn't explained fully how careful we needed to be. If you look at Italy, 80 to 90% of people were wearing masks from the beginning, compared to 10% in the UK. And still, I would say that people are more compliant in other countries with the guidelines than they are here.
Well, that's interesting, because you look at Sweden, which is this big thing that everyone on every extreme now uses to prove or disprove the theories.
Yeah, and their expert has been over to brief Boris Johnson.
Right, but the reality about Sweden is, and Sven-Göran Eriksson told us this on this programme, is that they are by nature a quite obedient country when it comes to this kind of thing. They have naturally socially distanced. They're much smaller, 10 million people, massively more laid out geographically. So a lot of them went to country homes and were away from people. But they naturally socially distanced. They also had no, and they still have, I understand, no mass gatherings over 50 people. They made that a rule from the start. Older students were not allowed back to study and so on. It wasn't like Sweden did nothing. And they still had a huge number of deaths, worst in the area and so on. So there's no obvious sort of holy grail way of dealing with this. But what we do know, Hilary, is we're heading into a winter season. There may well be there will be a form of flu season, we don't know how bad, running concurrently with it. And we just have to be very careful, don't we?